The road ended without warning. Concrete blocks funneled me off the highway, arrows flashing me toward a place I hadn't planned to go. There was no way to turn around, no way to keep going. I hadn't planned to stop anywhere near that area. The trip was supposed to be simple. Drive through unfamiliar places, cheap rooms, small towns. Keep moving. The asylum was never part of it. I hadn't searched for it. I hadn't marked it on a map. I stopped because the barriers left no other option. The detour signs pulled me uphill into forest that grew thicker with every mile. My phone lost signal. Daylight faded. The road narrowed until I slowed almost to a crawl, my headlights brushing tree trunks that leaned close to the asphalt. Then the trees opened. The building stood on the ridge, large and still. Concrete, grey, tall windows stacked in columns. Most were dark. A few reflected the sky, hiding whatever was behind them. The gates were open, rusted and bent inward. A sign lay face down in the grass. I pulled over without knowing why. The engine clicked as it cooled. Wind moved through gaps in the building and produced a low, uneven sound that didn't stop. I told myself I would take a photo and leave. When I looked up, the main doors were already open. Inside, it was cold. The air smelled faintly of cleaning solution and old paper. Someone had been here recently. The entrance hall was wide and empty. Corridors branched in every direction, all the same height and width. My footsteps echoed. The sound came back a moment later, different. I walked forward, telling myself I would turn back after the next corner, once I took a few pictures. Ahead, there were no chains, no warning signs, no barriers. The building didn't look damaged. It looked unused, but not abandoned. Notice boards lined the walls. Most were empty, but one still held a schedule. The ink was faded, but readable. Lights out, 9. Wake up, 6. Quiet hours enforced. I stood there longer than I meant to. As I went on, the doors started to stand out. Some were numbered, but the sequence didn't make sense. Numbers repeated, and a few doors had no numbers at all. Each door was heavy, fitted with a narrow observation window reinforced with wire. The doors were all closed. I stopped at one and listened. There was nothing on the other side. Somewhere behind me, deeper in the building, a door creaked open. I turned, expecting to see someone standing there, but the corridor was empty. One door at the end of it was now open. I kept walking and chose another corridor at the next junction, telling myself the building was old. I knew old buildings made noises, but that didn't make me feel any better. That's when the voices started. They weren't shouting or calling out. They were counting, low, muffled, overlapping. Numbers spoken out of order. Some repeated, some stopped halfway through. The sound came from behind the doors as I passed them, rising and fading. I slowed my breathing without meaning to. I kept going. The rooms were different from what I had passed earlier. The small patient rooms were replaced by larger areas. One long room had drains set into the floor. Another had chairs arranged in a circle. Every chair faced inward. There was nothing in the center. I checked my phone. The screen showed only the battery. The percentage was dropping. That's when I decided to turn back. The corridor behind me was longer than it should have been. The ceiling felt lower. The walls felt closer. There were more doors now, lining both sides. The observation windows were dark. As I walked, the counting grew clearer. 6, 9, 6, 4. I stopped. The numbers continued. 6, 1, 4. They weren't counting up. They weren't counting down. I kept walking. I saw a sign above a stairwell at the end of the corridor. Admissions. The stairwell smelled damp and metallic. The steps went down farther than I expected. Every level looked the same, and the lights flickered, but stayed on. At the bottom of the stairs, there was a desk, and on top of it was an open ledger. I got closer. The final page was filled with names, dates, and lengths of stay. Most of the entries read ongoing. When I saw my name at the bottom, I stopped reading. The space where the date should have been was left blank. Behind the desk was a wall of observation windows. Beyond the glass was a wide room filled with beds. Thin curtains separated them. Some were drawn, some were open. People lay on the beds. They weren't restrained, and they weren't asleep. They lay on their backs with their eyes open, staring upward, their chests rising and falling together in the same rhythm. When I stepped closer to the glass, every head turned at once. All of them looked directly at me, and the counting stopped. A voice spoke behind me. "You shouldn't be here." I turned, my heart racing in my chest. A man stood there. He was wearing plain white clothing. The fabric was worn thin, and his face was ordinary in a way that made it hard to focus on. He looked past me and said, "Strangers are not welcomed here." I said I am leaving. He didn't react to that. Instead, he added, "It's too late now, but you can try." He raised his hand and pointed down another corridor. "Go," he said quietly. I didn't trust him, but I went anyway. The corridor was narrower. Parts of the walls were padded. Other sections were torn open, concrete exposed. The air felt heavier here. As I walked, the lights behind me went out one by one. The path ahead stayed lit. The doors here had no numbers. They had names. Some of them were familiar. I couldn't place where I knew them from, but I knew them. Near the end of the corridor was a door without a name. It stood open. Inside was a small room. A single chair was bolted to the floor, with straps hanging loose from the arms. A mirror covered the far wall. I stepped inside. The mirror reflected the room clearly. The chair, the straps, the door behind me. It did not reflect me. I moved closer to the glass, shifting side to side, raising a hand. The reflection didn't change. The space where I should have been remained empty. From somewhere outside the room, the counting started again. Low. Close now. I backed away from the mirror and turned toward the door. The corridor beyond it was empty, but the sound was still there, slipping between the walls. The lights went out. I left the room without closing the door. I ran. Doors opened as I passed. Hands brushed my clothes, my skin, my hair. The counting returned, louder now. 6, 1, 4. I broke through the final door into daylight. The building stood behind me, silent, the gates still open. My car was where I had left it, and the engine started immediately. I drove without stopping until the road widened and my phone regained signal. The building disappeared in the mirror. I didn't sleep that night. Weeks later, the sound still comes back at night, low and patient. I keep thinking about the ledger at the bottom of the stairs. My name at the bottom. I don't know when or why it was written. I only know it is there.